If you ever looked at a plain corner of your yard and whispered, "I wish I could bring the mountains here," then this episode is made for you. Welcome to Crafted Nest, your cozy corner for poetic, real-life garden inspiration. Today, we'll explore 23 Alpine garden design ideas, each one small enough to fit your yard, yet grand enough to feel like a mountaintop. We believe in the power of Amati, Tiru, Dan Modificasi. Observe what inspires you, recreate with your hands, and shape it with what you already have. These ideas aren't fantasy. They're doable with recycled pots, stones, moss, and care. Subscribe to Crafted Nest and bring stories into your soil. Because the garden isn't just a place, it's a feeling you grow into. You'd be surprised how much beauty can grow in a crack. Just beside the back fence, where the slope was too dry and rocky for anything to thrive, we began tucking tiny things, bits of sedum, thrift, even a few creeping ferns, into the crevices between the stones. At first, it looked like nothing. Then one spring morning, a spray of pink bloomed right out of the rock face. There's something deeply poetic about crevice gardening. It's not grand, it's not flashy, but it feels ancient, like you're cooperating with time, not fighting against it. If you got a broken walkway, an old stone wall, or even just a pile of rubble in your yard, that's all you need. Fill in the gaps with coarse grit or gravel. Press in drought-hardy plants with shallow roots and let them find their way. Nature knows what to do when you give a foothold, and when you walk by and see color blooming from between the cracks. You'll remember, even the smallest spaces can carry life. You'd be surprised how much beauty can grow in a crack. Just beside the back fence, where the slope was too dry and rocky for anything to thrive, we began tucking tiny things, bits of sedum, thrift, even a few creeping ferns, into the crevices between the stones. At first, it looked like nothing. Then one spring morning, a spray of pink bloomed right out of the rock face. There's something deeply poetic about crevice gardening. It's not grand, it's not flashy, but it feels ancient, like you're cooperating with time, not fighting against it. If you got a broken walkway, an old stone wall, or even just a pile of rubble in your yard, that's all you need. Fill in the gaps with coarse grit or gravel. Press in drought-hardy plants with shallow roots and let them find their way. Nature knows what to do when you give a foothold, and when you walk by and see color blooming from between the cracks. You'll remember, even the smallest spaces can carry life. Sometimes, that needs a climb, and in a small yard, the trick isn't go wide, it's to go deep upward. Our Alpine garden began with a simple idea: arrange it like a mountain. The base held soft things that hug the soil, stone crop, thyme, moss. Above that, thrift and arboreta gave it spring blush. At the back, a few conifers stood steady like guardians of the ridge. When you stand in front of it, it doesn't shout, but it draws your gaze upward gently, as if inviting you to wander. A garden that layers like this turns inches into miles. It teaches you to look closely. It's easy to do with some slope, natural or built. Start small. Think in layers, low, mid, high, each with its own purpose, each with its own story. And when it rains, and droplets trace their way down from conifer to flower to moss, it feels like watching a mountain breathe. Some gardens speak in bold shapes and color, but an alpine path whispers. It draws you forward slowly, letting every step become part of the experience. When we laid the gravel down, we didn't measure. We wandered. We let the path curve as it wanted. edged with old stones we found near the shed. Then came the moss, tiny green islands we coaxed into place with water and shade. Over weeks, they settled in, softening the edge, making each turn of the path feel ancient and loved. This kind of path doesn't need space. It just needs intention. Use coarse gravel to let water drain freely, and frame your trail with found stones. Tuck moss into the shaded cracks, or use creeping thyme for sunnier spots. Let plants blur the edges. Perfection is the enemy of peace, and as you walk it barefoot in the evening, you'll feel like you're stepping into a story that's always been there. You just didn't notice it before. In a flat yard, sometimes the spirit of a mountain needs a little help. We didn't have hills or boulders or wild terrain, just a patch of dry soil and some forgotten stones. But that was enough. We began stacking, not with precision but with feeling. A mound rose from the middle of our garden, one shovelful at a time. Then came the rocks, placed like they had tumbled there long ago. Between them we planted stone crop, thrift, a twist of pine. Soon, the garden wasn't just horizontal. It was layered, elevated, alive with dimension. Birds began landing on the topmost stone, and every rain carved tiny paths into the gravel. If your garden is small, don't just think flat. Even a mound 2 feet tall can feel like a mountain when it's built with care. And when you sit beside it, you'll realize you made more than a feature. You've shaped a landscape that rises, slowly and silently, toward the sky. When space is scarce and sunlight dances in only one corner of the yard, you build your own peaks, one trough at a time. We started with a cracked concrete sink left behind by the previous owner. Instead of discarding it, we filled it with grit and nestled in a few sedums. Then came a smaller basin and another stacked like ledges on a mountainside. Each one became its own tiny biome. Some dry and stony, others cool and mossy. The beauty of Alpine trough gardens is in the scale. You can create entire worlds within a foot of space. Old sinks, metal pans, broken clay pots. Anything that can hold soil and drain freely becomes a vessel for wonder. Plant tight. Keep the palate restrained. Let texture tell the story. Jagged rocks, soft moss, silver-leaved plants bending toward the light. And as the seasons turn, you'll find joy in tending a collection of living sculptures. A vertical terrain built not by nature, but by hands that know how to listen to it. It started with one rock, a gift from a neighbor, old, veined with quartz, and heavy in the hands. Then 2 more joined, each chosen not for perfection, but for the way they seemed to belong together. We arranged them in a triangle, not mathematically, but with quiet intention. One taller, one squat, one resting slightly on its side. Around them, we sprinkled gravel, tucked in thrift and stone crop, and let the space breathe. There's something sacred about this composition. It feels ancient, anchored, and though it only fills one corner of the yard, it draws the eye like a natural altar. If you have a neglected corner, between a fence, beneath a window, try beginning with 3 stones. Let their height differ. Let their weight tell the story. Surround them gently, and one day, in the stillness of evening, you may find yourself drawn there without knowing why. In the heart of our Alpine garden, where gravel meets moss and pine, there's a quiet voice, the sound of water slipping over stone. We build it not for grandeur, but for the hush it brings in the late afternoon. A stack of rocks, chosen by touch and texture, hides a small pump. The water rises without fanfare, spills with gentle insistence, and disappears again into the gravel like a secret. It invites you to pause, to sit, to listen. You don't need a grand fountain or fancy parts. A watertight basin, a simple submersible pump, and a handful of stacked stone are enough to summon that mountain spring feeling. Add mosses, tuxedos nearby, and keep the mechanism invisible. Let nature take the stage. Even in the smallest yard, the sound of moving water transforms a space into something ancient and alive. And on warm nights, with the stars overhead, you'll find yourself drawn back to it, again and again. Not every alpine scene basks in sunlight. Some tuck themselves into the shade, where the earth stays cool and the air carries a hush. We found this corner beneath the old tree, a spot where grass refused to grow, where the soil stayed damp long after rain. So we leaned into it. We nestled saxifrages and ferns between the darker stones, laid moss like a soft rug beneath them, and let the shade guide the mood. Shade gardens have their own rhythm. They're not flashy, but they're steady. They welcome you on hot days and surprise you with tiny, delicate blooms that only open in quiet. If you got a patch of yard that never sees full sun, don't fight it. Work with it. Use plants that love the cool. Tuck in some logs or hollow stones and watch how moisture settles in the cracks. And when the wind rustles through the trees above, you might hear the garden sigh, a gentle breath of the mountains, hidden in the shadows. Moss doesn't rush, neither does lichen. They settle in, slowly, creeping across stone like time made visible. We didn't plant the moss. We invited it. We gave it a place, a cool rock, a shady bend in the garden, a bit of mist each morning. And then we waited weeks, months, and one day it was simply there, softening everything. Lichen came on its own, ancient freckles of pale green spreading like stories told in whispers. These are the details that make an alpine garden feel lived in, not staged, not curated, just honest. They hide the edges. They age the new. They make a garden feel like it's always been there, even when it's only just begun. And when you brush your fingers across the cool velvet of moss, or spot the tiniest bloom of lichen on a weathered stone, you'll remember some of the best things in life grow slowly and need nothing but time. Not every mountain needs acres. Sometimes a peak fits in a pot. We started small, a cracked ceramic bowl, some gritty soil, and a few bits of broken rock that caught the light just right. We added a pinch of sedum, a curl of moss, and suddenly it became a world. These tiny alpine scenes are more than decor. They're experiments in perspective, a chance to slow down and design with intention. Every stone has a role. Every crevice can hold life. You don't need a yard, just a ledge, a table, a window. Use old containers, anything that drains well, and build your own geology. Let your fingers shape hills and valleys. Place a pebble trail. Watch a sedum bloom from a crack like a surprise. And when the world feels too big or heavy, step outside and tend to your small landscape. A garden you can carry. A mountain you made. Spring doesn't ask permission. It just arrives, quietly through the cracks. Our alpine bed slept in silence all winter. Gravel settled, moss deepened its green, and the stones stood still. But then came the crocuses, small, bold, almost laughably bright. They sprang up between the rocks like joyful secrets. Tiny flares of yellow, violet, and white that caught the sun and held it. We'd tucked their bulbs deep into the soil months before. No grand plan, just a handful here and there. And now, every bloom feels like a reward for patience. Alpine bulbs are like that. They don't need much, just a little space, well-draining soil, and the faith that something beautiful will return. You don't need rows or borders. Tuck them near stones, under shrubs, between gravel beds. Let them surprise you, because sometimes the most powerful color in a garden is the one that blooms where nothing else dares to. There's a certain honesty to wood that is aged. It doesn't shine. It doesn't ask for attention. It simply sits, weathered, split, silver by sun and rain, and tells its story in silence. In our garden, we didn't buy sculptures. We found a fallen branch near the stream, a broken board from the old fence, a length of driftwood curled like a river. We gave them places, among stones, beside moss, sometimes standing, sometimes leaning like old travelers. And the garden changed. These wooden shapes, softened by time, gave it a rhythm. They whispered mountain stories. Even in the middle of the city, if you find old wood, don't toss it. Drill a few shallow pockets and tuck in small plants. Lay it across gravel like a bridge. Or simply place it where your eye might rest and your breath might slow. Because in a world full of shiny, there's something sacred about things that have been worn by the world and still remain. There's a moment just after the sun slips behind the trees, when the garden inhales and the light begins to change. It's then that our Alpine corner comes alive again, not with color or bloom, but with shadow, form, and glow. We didn't flood it with spotlights. We tucked soft solar lamps behind stones, beneath shrubs, near the base of boulders. The light doesn't blind, it reveals. It spills upward across pine bark, catches the silver edge of a lichen patch, makes gravel gleam like riverbed. In small yards, drama doesn't need scale, it needs contrast. Cool air, warm light, stone and shadow. If you want your garden to feel like a place, not just a project, let's speak after dark. Use gentle lighting to draw the eye, not demand it. And when you step outside at night and see it glowing like a quiet dream, you'll remember gardens don't sleep. They whisper in the dark. Every garden needs an anchor, a place where the eye can rest. In ours, that place is a circle. It began with a single pine, a compact one, its needles dense and slightly blue. We planted it in the center of a blank patch of soil, unsure of what might grow around it. But the space wanted form, and so we gave it shape, a circle like the hush at the heart of forest. Around the pine, we laid crushed gravel in rings, not strict ones, not measured by tape, but shaped by rhythm. First coarse stone, then river pebbles, then a halo of creeping sedum spilling gently over the edge. Each layer was a breath, an echo, a gesture outward. Why a circle? Because it calms, because it contains, because it feels like it's been there long before you arrived. This design doesn't just work for aesthetics. It functions. The gravel keeps weeds down and reflects light into the plant's base. The rings provide drainage while allowing space for microplantings. Alpine blooms moss thyme. It becomes a microclimate, structured yet natural. And when you step back, the circle doesn't shout. It settles in, quietly commanding the space, like a small mountain temple. You don't always need a destination. Sometimes a path is reason enough. We laid our stones with no plan, no straight line, no measured spacing. We walked, paused, placed one, stepped again, another, until the trail curved like a question mark through our small alpine space. It winds beneath pines, brushes past moss, and disappears behind a boulder. Between each flagstone, thyme and low sedum soften the gap, turning hard shapes into quiet invitations. This kind of path isn't about movement, it's about pace. It slows you down. It makes you look. And in a garden inspired by mountain trails. Isn't that the point? Choose stones with texture. Let plants claim the edges. Don't correct the curves. Let them feel discovered. Because the most memorable paths are rarely straight. They're the ones that take their time and invite you to do the same. There's always a moment in the garden, after planting, after weeding, after watching water spill down stone, where you need to sit, and not to work, not to plan, just to be. That's why we place the bench. It's nothing fancy, old, maybe even a bit crooked, with wood that creaks when you settle down. But it fits between the rocks like it grew there. Around it, the alpine garden rises gently, moss to one side, sedum to the other, with the pine behind leaning just enough to cast shade in the afternoon. We didn't buy this bench to match anything. We found it leaning against a neighbor's fence, offered for free. All we added was time and a little patience. Now it waits, always the quietest part of the yard. It teaches something too. Gardens aren't just for growing, they're for stopping. And if you build one seed into the landscape, even just a board on 2 stones, you'll find yourself there more often than you expect, listening to the gravel crunch, watching the wind move the conifers, and remembering what stillness feels like. It was never in the plan. The gnome tucked behind the stone, the tiny painted rock beneath the pine, the sign we carved one rainy afternoon and forgot to seal properly. But now they're part of it. Not centerpieces, not statements, just quiet surprises. In alpine gardens, where the wildness is curated and the plants grow slow and strong, these bits of whimsy are like laughter held between stones. They catch the eye when you're not looking for them. They make children stop. They make guests smile. You don't need much. A painted pebble, a small sculpture, a marker with a name scratched into it by hand. Hide them between moss. Let them peek out from lichen. These aren't decorations. They're invitations to look closer, to wonder, because the best gardens aren't only beautiful, they're personal, and sometimes the smallest thing is the one that makes the memory. Some gardens dance in bright color. Ours exhales. We built this alpine space not with a painter's palette, but with a poet's quiet. Silver thyme, blue fescue, gray gravel, and the palest lavender blooms like whispered punctuation. It wasn't loud. It wasn't fast. It felt like morning, always mist clinging to pine needles, light barely bending through the trees. Cool palettes in a small space create calm. They soften the edges, blur the boundaries, and open the heart to quiet detail. Choose plants with dusty foliage, blue-leaning greens, and delicate purples. Anchor them with stone. Frame them with space. Let each plant glow without glare. You don't need contrast to captivate, just harmony, just restraint. And when you walk through it, this garden doesn't shout to be noticed. It stays with you, like the stillness after snowfall, or the hush before the dawn. There are gardens that soothe, and there are gardens that warm you, like the last light of day pressing gently on your skin. This one was made with sunset in mind. We chose the colors of embers and clay. Burnt orange, soft coral, deep rust, glowing gold. We matched them with rock, not gray this time, but sandstone, terracotta, and weathered brick. As the sun dipped lower each evening, the garden lit up not from lamps, but from within. Warm-colored Alpine gardens bring energy without chaos. They pulse gently, inviting movement, drawing attention inward. And in small spaces, these hues can make the yard feel larger, radiating light from every bloom and surface. Choose heat-loving plants that echo desert mountains. Alpine poppies, coral sedum, copper-tone thrift. Surround them with gravel that warms in the sun. You'll feel it too, even in early morning. This kind of garden carries the memory of firelight, and as the day fades, your yard won't fall into shadow. It'll glow. Not everything broken is wasted. We found the pot under the bench, cracked clean in two, left behind from who knows when. And instead of tossing it, we tilted it into the garden bed, let it lie sideways, and filled it with life. We packed the base with gravel, then added soil, tucked in some trailing sedum and dwarf aubrietta, and watched them pour gently out like a floral stream. There's a quiet charm in spilled gardens, a movement that's frozen but never stiff. They turn brokenness into art, structure into softness. If you have an old pot, don't stand it upright. Tip it, angle it like it fell there naturally. Let your flowers flow out like water across gravel, as if the earth itself opened and bloomed. Because in gardens, just like in life, what spills out unexpectedly can often be the most beautiful part. There's a tree in our garden that doesn't tower. It twists. Its trunk bends like it's been shaped by years of wind. Its branches lean like a traveler on a mountain ledge. It's no accident. We pruned it gently over seasons, watched its growth, guided its shape until it became more than a plant. It became a story. Bonsai-like pines in alpine gardens are not about perfection. They're about resilience. Their size may be small, but they carry the scale of entire forests in a single glance. Place them high, on ledges, planters, or even a stone pillar. Let them feel like they're standing above the world. Surround them with gravel, slow-growing moss, or tiny blooms that hug the soil. And when the wind comes, you'll see them sway, just slightly, like they've known this place far longer than you have. Because every garden needs a sentinel, and a tree shaped by time, not speed, stands quietly and watches the world go by. We didn't build it for walking. We built it for pausing. The spiral began with just a handful of pebbles, gathered from a riverbed, a beach, the edge of the old driveway. Each one smooth, each one shaped by water and time. We pressed them into sand in widening circles, letting color tell the story, gray, white, gold, rust, until the pattern curved in on itself like a mountain breeze caught in stone. In a small alpine garden, a spiral mosaic isn't just decoration. It's grounding. It's a moment made visible, a space that asks for stillness. You can build one, too, in the center of your yard, or hidden like a secret. Lay the pebbles close and low. Keep the palette simple. Let the pattern guide your eyes inward. And when you sit beside it, as the wind lifts the pine needles, you'll feel what we felt, that even in the smallest places, you can shape meaning one stone at a time,